Hey guys, this episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast is presented by our brand new Sports Spectrum Increase 52-week devotional, inspiring stories of faith from the world of pro sports. This devotional, this book, is available now at Amazon and at theincrease.com. That's the website, theincrease.com. And I'm telling you, it's a great resource. It's a great gift idea. It's a great devotional to go through with your family, with your coaching staff, with your team, once a week, inspiring stories from athletes and other people in the world of sports who were interviewed and featured here on Sports Spectrum. And now we put this in a book form, and I know it's going to encourage you. I love this devotional. I hope you'll consider getting yourself a copy. Again, the 52-week Increase devotional, available at Amazon and at theincrease.com.
This is Sports Spectrum, the intersection of sports and faith, where we bring Jesus back into the conversation. Here's your host, Jason Romano.
Hey guys, welcome to the show. I am Jason. This is the Sports Spectrum podcast. I hope you're doing great today. Thanks so much for joining us here on the show. Got a great conversation coming up with Tim Fanning. Now, Tim, he's a pretty decorated baseball coach in Alabama for Glenwood High School, the Glenwood Gators, 8-time state champion in the state of Alabama, coaching baseball. Tim is also an author. He's written 2 books, Serve to Lead and Serve to Lead Part 2. The idea of Serve to Lead is actually turned into a nonprofit organization that Tim is the starter of too, and is the founder of, Serve to Lead. You can learn more at servetolead2.com. Tim's got an amazing story. He's got a ton of wisdom, and he's a guy that loves Jesus. He's a guy that's leading with Christ in front as a successful high school coach. He's also a guy that battled cancer, stage 4 colon cancer 2 years ago, and he's in remission now and fighting the good fight of faith and trusting in God that he's going to take him to places that he never thought. I think he's already done that. And so you're going to enjoy this conversation. I know you are, with Tim Fanning. Take a pen, get a notebook. Lots of good wisdom here from a coach who's won 8 state championships in baseball in the state of Alabama. Tim Fanning is joining us right now on Sports Spectrum. Take a listen. Tim Fanning, welcome to Sports Spectrum, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm just honored to be speaking with you today.
It's great to have you. This book, you have 2 books actually, Serve to Lead and Serve to Lead 2. I'm holding the Serve to Lead 2 in my hand, which is the latest. Let's just start right there in the idea of Serve to Lead. Not even just the book, but the concept. Where did that come from for you?
Well, I think as a coach, every coach needs to build a philosophy. And, you know, being an assistant coach, I think, is important because you get to see a lot of things that you may want to do, not do, things of that nature. But I was always raised, and my mother was a servant. And as a coach, I wanted to try to find a way to marry those 2 things together. So Serve to Lead, honestly, if you had to ask me to just sum it up really quick, is basically my philosophy on coaching.
And Jesus, the ultimate example here, right?
Absolutely. And with my mother, I keep going back to her, because, I grew up without a father and we were, on welfare and things like that, but it never seemed to bother her. And if she only had change in her pocket when she went to church, she was going to take it all out and put it in an offering plate. I may come home and we're living in squalor, so to speak, and there'll be another family living with us. Or, and that always stuck with me and resonated with me, because being a servant is not about money. It's being a servant where you are. It doesn't matter if you're digging ditches or you're an NBA basketball star, or that's irrelevant, to be honest. So I'll be honest, I was very fortunate to have that example my entire life, to watch my mother serve others while not wanting anything in return.
It's funny, Tim, we were talking beforehand, and I was grateful to hear that you were reading my book, and you said it felt like you were speaking, that I was speaking to you, or that you were speaking as you were reading this book. And I just hear you say you grew up without a dad and your mom was a servant. And I feel like you're telling my story, because I grew up without a dad too. My dad was around, but he wasn't present, and he struggled and suffered with alcoholism for years. And my mom was our hero. She just turned 70, and we did like a big 70th birthday and got to hang out with her and really honor her and tell her how much her sacrifices meant to me and my two brothers as we grew up. I'm not saying it's your mom's 70th, but this is a perfect platform to kind of honor her a little bit. Tell me about mom and kind of what you saw reflecting Christ in the way that she lived. And you kind of explained a little bit of it, but just the effect that that's had on you as you grow up here and now where you are and all the success you've had as a coach.
Well, I think, one example, like when I was writing the book and I've done these things, and, so my mom will see me on TV, or she'll, nobody sells more books than my mother. She is, I'm telling you.
I would echo the same thing.
I'm telling you, she goes to church. She's taking box in hand. She's selling them to anybody and everybody under the sun.
Yeah.
But, every now and then you get to sit down, and she actually, we're sitting there one day and she's like, you know what? I've never told you this, but you never asked me for anything. And it meant so much to me, because all your other friends had things and you never asked. And I think, and I get emotional thinking about it, because I saw her sacrifice so much, and I only wanted to try to repay her with becoming the man she wanted me to be. And I knew that was not possible without Christ, because where I grew up, and there were so many bad things around us, and a lot of drugs and a lot of crime, and I knew if I didn't seek him like she did, that I would probably go down the wrong path very quickly.
Wow. Tell me about, if you were willing to, your dad's situation. And growing up without a dad's not easy, right? And you're a dad now, and pretty darn good one as far as I've read and seen. But tell me about kind of what that effect was on you. And I tell people all the time, when I became a dad, and I just have one child, but when I became a dad to my daughter, I just tried to do everything that my dad wasn't to me.
Right.
And turn around and give that to her. So does that ring a bell? Does that sound familiar?
It does. Being present is one thing. And, and as you may read in the book, a couple of years ago, I was diagnosed with stage 4 colon cancer.
Yeah.
And to be quite honest, with everybody that's going to listen to this, once I found that out, I started to become ashamed of who I was as a father. And some people would say, what do you mean? Well, as a coach, you work 60, 70 hours a week. Now, one thing that I did follow God's path, and the school that I work at, I raised my daughters here since they were 3 years old. And that's why I never left and took bigger jobs or for more money or anything like that, because I knew God wanted me here so that I could be with them every day, as opposed to, just coaching and not seeing them all the time. So, but the reason I say this is, when I was diagnosed and I spoke to State Coaches Association, and there was probably, 300 or 400 coaches there. And I just got up there and I spoke from the heart, because, and you and I touched on this a little bit about being intentional. And I didn't feel like I was being intentional with my time. And I kind of reverted back to, my childhood and how intentional my mother was, even though in the absence of my father. She would work 3 jobs and then come home and try to play catch with me. And she didn't even know how to catch a baseball. You know what I mean? So it really made me evaluate how I was as a father to my daughters. And I will tell you this, I'm a much better father now, having gone through cancer, than I was before. Not to say that I was, abusive or, had alcohol problems or anything like that, but those are just the things that people notice, that are maybe big things, but it's all the little things, I think, as parents, we may take for granted because we have these blessings in front of us and we just are fast forwarding through life. And I just wanted to slow down and be the father that God had called me to be. And that, to be quite honest, I didn't feel like I was, because it was on to the next thing. Everyone does. If you're a successful person, everyone's got a to-do list, and everyone
task
has
oriented, right?
That's right. And everyone has ambitions.
Sure.
But what happens is we don't realize the actual beauty that's surrounding us every single day. And I think, honestly, cancer allowed me to see that. And people ask me about that. Man, it's a miracle. And, I had 16% chance of living, whatever. I never looked at the odds growing up, because if I did, I wouldn't have made it.
Mm-hmm.
So what I realized sitting in the hospital bed by myself because of COVID, after the biggest surgery of my life, is that God wasn't healing me. He wasn't healing my body. He was healing my heart. And I'll always be eternally grateful for that, because it's, as much as we want to say, we want to be successful, the only success really matters is our relationship with Christ and our family. Because I can tell you this, he doesn't care how many state championships I've won, or how many games I've won, or how many kids we've sent to college, and that's great. But those relational things is really what life is all about. I know that was a little long-winded. I'm sorry, but
this is a podcast. This is where you can be long-winded, Tim Fanning. I do want to ask you, because there's a lot to unpack with what you just said. And I think a couple things come to mind. First of all, I want to talk about your cancer diagnosis and kind of how you walked through that with God. And you kind of expressed a little bit of that, but I do want to talk about that in a second. But I really want to kind of go into this whole idea of coaching, leading with Christ in front, because you have had a lot of success. And you're right. I don't think God cares that you've won 8 state championships, as far as I read here, 8-time state champion. It's nice. And it's a great vehicle to allow people to listen to what you have to say and maybe write a book or write 2 books and things like that. But yet there's something about success in leading with Christ in front. So let's start there. As a coach, first of all, the idea of coaching, where does that come from, right? When did you know that you wanted to be a coach? And then leading with Christ in front as a coach, that leads to a lot of success for you.
Well, as far as wanting to be a coach, I was actually, I finished playing college baseball, and then I played some independent baseball professionally. And then I had an opportunity to travel the world selling merchandise and things like that. So, which was really cool. Like it allowed me to stay entrenched with big time events and athletics and things like that. And it was high paced, always working 100-hour weeks and just, adrenaline, all that sort of thing. So a friend of mine that I knew told me about a job opening at Glenwood. And at the time, I really didn't think about it because, like I said, you're just blowing and going and working really hard. Well, I came and sat down with the athletic director and the head football coach and the principal. And as I was sitting there, I was listening to them talk, and these guys were like some of the most successful guys in the state of Alabama history. One in football, one in college basketball. Okay. And I'm sitting there and just humbleness oozed out of them, and I was just sitting there and I'm like, I want to be these guys. I want to do this because I started thinking about it, and I hadn't thought about it until then, what the impact my coaches that I had grown up had on me until that moment right there. And It was kind of weird because you'd think you would have thought about it before then, but I was just sitting there and I'm like, man, these guys are unbelievable. Like, I want to be them. I want to, you know what I mean? Because if they're having this impact on me as an adult, what kind of impact have they had over the last 30 years on changing people's lives? So, of course, then I go home to my wife and I have to tell her that, yeah, well, I really want to do this, honey, but it'll be about $20,000 less than what I'm making now. And she's in medical school at the time, studied to be a physical therapist. So, of course, just like she always does, she's like, well, honey, if that's what God wants you to do, then that's what you need to do. And that's basically how I got into it. And like I mentioned earlier, just seeing how they treated people and how they put everyone ahead of themselves. So I think as I've grown as a Christian, I've become a better coach. And what I mean by that is, so many times coaches are judged by wins. So that's where when they're listing things that matter, winning is at the top.
Sure.
You know what I mean? You hear it on TV all the time. I mean, winning covers up. I mean, if he just wins, then all these problems go away, or, whatever.
Sure.
Yeah, they may go away in the media. They don't go away in your heart. They don't go away to the people you're coaching. So, and fortunately for me, I don't deal in that world. Okay. I don't care if anybody sees me or not sees me. The only reason I would want someone to is so that I can impact them, either show them a way to Christ or show them that I'm here for them if they want to be, if they want that life. And it really is the foundation of my entire coaching philosophy, because our 4 criteria for decision making is God, family, education, then sports. So if before you make any decision in life, you can check all 4 of those things, then it's a good decision. And if you can't, then it's not. So that's really what and I hope I answered the question. It was that really propelled me to want to be better, to do things a little bit different, and I'm we have rules and regulations, and they're not negotiable. And I know sometimes, I see it where winning takes precedent over what's right, and right. And that's what I tell my kids: right is right and wrong is wrong, no matter what. It doesn't matter what level you're at. Okay. That doesn't change. So, we may have a big region game and 3 of my starters are sitting because of something they did at school, and then their parents may be, well, I mean, you just could have ran them. I'm like, I wouldn't do anything. You have to let them understand that, winning is a byproduct of serving everyone around you. And I've always found that to be true. Now, when you have very unselfish people and talent come together, then you have amazing things, so it's kind of like a paradigm up and down, unselfishness, selflessness and talent, you know what I mean? And then, so if you have a extremely unselfish team that maybe is not as talented and they get as far as they can, you have just as much fun and have just as good a relationship with those young men and women that when they come together and have the best record in school history and nationally ranked and all these D1 players. It doesn't change how you feel about those kids. You know what I mean? I've always told people that I want the kid that's just fighting to be a part of our program to be just as important as the kid that's going to get drafted. You know,
it's hard though, isn't it, Tim? Because those guys that are not playing or 10th, 11th, 12th on the bench, and I'm watching it even up here at the high schools in Connecticut, they want to play. They want to be a part of it. They want to get their opportunity. And they're 16, 17 years old. And it's hard for them to buy into a culture to say, yeah, I'm still valuable and I'm still important, when it's so apparent that they think their value is placed on their performance.
Right. And that's, and I hate to say this, it's, you know, travel ball and all, you know what I mean? If they don't get to play, they go to the next team or they go to the next school or the, you know, and I understand that, but unfortunately 5 years down the road, when they think about it, they're like, why did I do that?
Right.
You know what I mean? But it also is important for the coach not to be transactional.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You have to be transformational, and you have to spend time with that kid that's on the bench that may not get to play and let him understand his value. His value may be, he may have the greatest aptitude to pray for the team.
Right.
Or you know what I mean? And
spiritual leader,
which calms everyone else down amidst all the noise. Okay. So, and then you may have one guy that can just run like the wind. I mean, he can't hit water if he fell out of a boat, but there's value in that as long as he understands that we value him and what God has given him. And that's one thing. I have a lot of individual meetings. I'm not a coach that, now I will yell every now and then, but it's more of about a team thing. I never call kids out individually for mistakes. But if you talk to them like a man or, you know, young man, and not just be transactional, like, hey, you're not hitting, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, you're not doing this, as opposed to, okay, you're struggling at this, but you can help us with this. You know what I mean? And I've always told kids, let's not worry about what you're not. Let's worry about what you are, because every one of us are different. You know, not just colors, not just religions, you know, beliefs, money, all these other things. God has given every one of us a talent. He's given you a great voice and a talent to do these things, right? I think he's given me some wherewithal to not be bothered by perception. You know, I think that's one of my gifts but I learned that growing up watching my mother. You know what I mean? That was kind of ingrained with me. She didn't care what people thought. So obviously I don't care what people thought. You know,
Tim, so the game of baseball too is the perfect baseball or perfect sport to do that, where you need everybody on the team to contribute, to have a role. Not everybody does the same thing. Obviously pitchers and hitters are different, but even in the hitters, you know, you have your scrappy guys who aren't going to hit 50 homers a year. I'm thinking from the major league level or even college. Right. But then you have your guys that are spray hitters, but play great. You just need every single person to embrace their role in order to have success.
Well, and then you're still going to fail.
7 out of 10 times if you're great, right?
Right. And that's the thing. That's why I love this sport, because it teaches you how to deal with failure. And, you know, and I said this one time, and it's baseball. It shows you the man you can become because of failure. It doesn't define who you are. Right. It just teaches you the man you can become. And you do that by failing. And you're right, you know, 15, 16, 17-year-old kids, you know, unfortunately, a lot of times I've been put up on pedestals. They think they're better than they are, which we all do. I understand that. But as you get a little bit older, you gain perspective and understand that the failing is how we learn to be successful, you know, and if I can teach them that and impress upon it. One thing we started doing recently is we started spending some quiet time. And I thought it was a little hokey to begin with. And, I know some really smart people who do it at a very high level. And it's been amazing because the kids just have so much noise right now in their lives with social media and all this going on, that I'm just trying to get them to understand that if they could just be present where they are and not worry about all this other noise and where they think they want to go, then they'll be the best versions of themselves. And in the end of the day, that's all I've ever wanted as a coach, to show young men that there's a way to eternal salvation and that they can be the best version of themselves if they just put others first. And that's really my entire message.
He is Tim Fanning. He's joining us here on Sports Spectrum, Glenwood Gators High School baseball coach. He's also their athletic director, 8-time state champion. You talked about your cancer diagnosis, July 30th, 2019. And that comes your way, stage 4 colon cancer. I really would love to hear how you were able to, because I was talking to somebody recently and they said, faith is not faith until it's tested. And I thought, wow, when have I been tested in my faith? I don't know if I have. I've had ups and downs in my life, but I've been a believer for 20 years. Right. And it hasn't come yet. Right. And it will, because every one of us is going to go through tests and we're all going to, get older someday. That's a test, man. That's a stage 4 colon cancer is a test from God. Right. So trusting in him when you get these curveballs, these de facto curveballs coming your way, what was that like for you? When you hear you have cancer and it's like, okay, God, I got to trust in you here. Or did you have a little anger with him? Did you not run right towards him when you're going through this? Take me through that sort of wrestle or whatever that was like with you and God during that time.
Well, I'll tell you this. I found out the day before I had to take my oldest daughter to college. So, it was really, I took her to college, moving her into her dorm room. And to be honest, and this is very strange to say, it was one of the most peaceful days I can ever remember in my life. And people when I tell them that, they're like, what?
Yeah. Why is that, right?
Because I wasn't worried about what time I was going to leave, what appointments I had, what I had to do the next day. I wasn't worried about any of that. It was all about her. And that's what I was kind of alluding to before. That started waking me up to the fact that this is not about me. God has blessed me with 2 amazing daughters, and my wife and relationship with him are the most important things to me. So I will say this. It is very up and down. It's you go through these highs and you go through these lows, and obviously in the lows is when you really start searching, and you start asking questions, and it just happened to be during the great pandemic, when I was going through all of this. And I think in years past, my biggest surgery was in March of 2020, which was subsequently 2 weeks after we got shut down.
Yeah, it was right when COVID hit.
So in the past, I know me, and I know that if we would have still been in baseball season and I had to go through that, the devil would have been right there on my shoulder. Hey man, look, he took this away from you, as opposed to that wasn't in the picture. So both my well, my one daughter was in high school, one was in college, but they shut down too.
Right.
So all that time when I was done recovering, I come home and there are my daughters and my wife with me the entire time. So it was a tough battle. I will say this, that it's a war, and people think it's a war physically, but it's a war mentally, because I think self-pity is a very big problem. But the more I think about it and I talk to people, a lot of times when I talk to groups, it's about self-pity, because it leads to so many things. It leads to alcoholism, obesity, infidelity, lack of spirituality.
Depression, I'm guessing.
It does.
Yeah.
It goes. But the one common thing, and I say this to my guys all the time, is when you start every sentence with I, there's some self-pity involved in there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So what I did when I started, I can't do this. I can't do baseball. I can't take myself to the bathroom right now. I don't feel like getting out of bed because of chemo. I started realizing, like, if I take that and I turn it around and flip it to where everyone else matters and not me, then it gives me a reason to fight, because it's not about me. And that's just that was kind of my strategy when it came to it, is I'm going to do this for everybody else, because I know God still has work for me to do, because he's working on me to be a better version to help, grow his kingdom, to be honest.
There's power in changing that I to a we when you speak. I notice that even when I talk about faith, when I talk to groups, when I say we as opposed to I went through this, I say we are going through this, or some of us, it suddenly includes everybody else. It takes yourself out of the equation, but even the other people feel like now they're part of whatever you're going through or whatever you have to say. It's such a powerful, small change, right?
Right.
A quarter turn, as I've heard some people say, but you go from I to we, and suddenly everything, the mindset changes.
It does. And I don't think God puts us through things so that we can get better. I think he challenges us so that we can make other people better.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And because if not, then why would he do that? Why, he could just take us up to heaven and we'll be done. You know what I mean?
He said he came to serve and not be served. That's why I feel like, man, that's what it is. It's about making others better.
It is. And that's, I do remember, like, this school was such a vital part of my healing, because whenever I was at my lowest, I'm going through chemo and, or whatever, for just recovering from a surgery. If I came to this campus, I just immediately felt better. But it took me a while to understand why I felt better, because it was an opportunity for me to, because these kids are so great. The faculty is so great. This community wrapped their arms around my family. They took care of us. But it gave me an opportunity when a kid would come up to me and say, "Coach, how are you doing?" Mm-hmm. "I'm doing fantastic, man. How are you doing?" And they would just look at me like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "This is the best day I've ever had." "It's the best day." I'm like, "Yeah, tomorrow's going to be the best day too." Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So I was trying to let them understand that don't feel sorry for me. Rejoice in the miracle that's standing in front of you, because God's grace, allowed this to happen. So you can have that too. It's just a choice that you have to make. And
that's good.
And that's the thing about grace. It's very hard. It's one thing to talk about it, but it's another thing to accept it. Because I think, and we have this small group of coaches that we meet with on Wednesday nights, and it's because coaches they go through things that not necessarily everyone else goes through. Okay. So
That's
they
right.
have commonalities, you know what I mean?
Very
Parents
unique position.
Right. So one of the things we were sharing, we were talking about grace, and I just said, yeah, it's really hard to accept. And one of the guys said, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, first of all, to accept grace, you have to accept that you're not in control. Okay. Because we think we can fix everything, especially as men, like we can just fix it. When you realize you can't, you have to accept his grace. And then we don't feel worthy of it. At least I didn't, because that's the thing about it. We all fall short of the glory of God, and we're all sinners. So we think as we sin, God is maybe pushing us away, but he's not. He's just saying, it's okay, buddy. You ain't done nothing I haven't seen. Just come on. I got you. Just keep coming towards me. You know what I mean? And that's really hard for us to accept, because there's shame. There's shame there when you, it's hard to explain to when you go through something like that, because I even explained like finishing chemo and ringing the bell. I was extremely, I don't know if shame was the word, but I felt like I was not worthy of doing that, because why do I deserve to make it when I've been going through chemo all these months and I've only heard the bell ring once? And what that means is not everyone makes it through that.
Right.
You know what I mean? But you have to, like I said, it's very hard to accept the grace sometimes, because we don't feel we're worthy of it, but he's there, man. I mean, he's always there. He's just, I promise you, there's nothing we do that he has not seen.
Right. Yeah.
And
he doesn't get surprised.
No, he doesn't. He's always just keep coming, buddy. I'm here. Yeah. I'm here.
Good. How are you, real quick? How are you doing health-wise? Are you cancer free?
So far, so good. I have scans every 6 months, which I have another one coming up next month. Okay. So that's another thing. You're always excited, not excited. You want
sure.
It, and it's a very hard thing to kind of process sometimes. And, but there again, you have to trust God's plan for your life. And that's easier said than done, I know. But, I'm just hoping I still have a colostomy bag, and I have a lot of scars from surgeries and things, but there again, that self-pity thing, when you look yourself in the mirror and you're like, ugh, like you have to change it and look at yourself like, wow, I'm just looking at a miracle. Those scars are the grace that God has showed me, because he brought me through it, and, that big surgery, they had to give me blood twice, and it didn't all go the way I intended it to, but it went the way he intended it to.
Yeah, that's good. And then lastly, you go and, you battle cancer, and at the same time, you decide to write a book, Tim Fanning. I mean, come on, man. You're writing a book while you're trying to battle cancer, like one at a time here, but here we are with Serve to Lead 2, which is the sequel, I guess, to Serve to Lead, the first book you wrote. Tell us real quick about this book, why people should get it, and what your heart is behind writing this particular book.
Well, we've talked about, coaching, and we've talked about cancer. One thing we haven't talked about is mission work. And we do that as well. We go to other countries and build fields and donate equipment and Bibles and things like that to try to help build communities through baseball. So basically that's what it is. It's my journey through cancer, my journey through mission work, and a lot of different countries, and my journey as a coach, serving others. So I think it's very relatable. It's extremely honest. I mean, I think the best person you can be for someone is if you're vulnerable and honest with them. Not just, as a person, but as a coach too. Because kids they don't want someone that they don't trust. And if they think you're, if they think that you can be honest with them, they're going to be honest with you. And that's all you can ever ask for in a relationship. It kind of chronicles those couple years, and then it's got some really cool stories. God has definitely blessed me and put me in some extremely wonderful situations. And I just try to tell it from that perspective. And I'd say it's an easy read, but it's not literature by any means.
It's your story, though.
Yeah. So I think it has a lot to offer people, and and that's why I did it. And and that's funny because we talked about going through cancer. Well, one thing about cancer and a pandemic is you're at home a lot.
Yes,
so
you are. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
yep.
I just started writing and couldn't stop. So.
Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad you wrote it. Serve to Lead 2. It's the number 2. If people are looking it up, Serve to Lead, then the number 2.com is the website. And that's also the name of the book, Serve to Lead 2. People can go get it right now. Especially coaches. I think coaches can be really encouraged. And you got endorsements from Butch Thompson from Auburn University and Tim Hudson, of course, the 17-year MLB veteran and All-Star Braves Hall of Fame pitcher. So pretty cool endorsements here. I'm sure we'd have more stories to tell, so we might have to get you back on at some point and tell some more. But thank you, Tim Fanning. Appreciate you coming on the show. Thanks for your honesty. Thanks for your battle. Thanks for your stance for Christ. Really, that's the most important thing. And just
Absolutely.
Appreciate you. So thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks, man. I like I said, I'm extremely honored and humbled to even be on this platform with you, to be perfectly honest with you.
Well, I appreciate you, buddy. Thanks for being here.
All right, man. Appreciate you.
And many thanks to Tim Fanning for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. Again, his website, Serve to Lead, and then the number 2, servetolead2.com is the website. You can learn more about Tim. You can order his books. You can even invite him to speak if you wanted. So definitely check it out, servetolead2.com. And many thanks to Tim for joining us here today on Sports Spectrum. He's got a great story, tons of wisdom, and I just thought he was a fantastic guest. Glad he was able to make some time and join us here today on Sports Spectrum. And hopefully someday I can get down to Phenix City, Alabama, and meet Tim myself, give him a handshake and maybe a big old hug, and thank him for sharing his story of Jesus and baseball and leading to serve, or serving to lead, I should say, here on Sports Spectrum. So we appreciate Tim Fanning. We appreciate you as well. We thank you for tuning in. If you like what you heard, consider subscribing to this podcast on whatever podcast app that you listen on, whether it's Apple or Spotify or any other podcast platform. Click that subscribe button and never miss an episode of Sports Spectrum's podcast. And tune in next time. We got another episode coming your way very soon, and we appreciate you. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.